Greetings, people. This is the Mexican American channel. You are welcome to join us. Hit the like button to support the channel and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. We are entering the next phase of white supremacy. Europeans are a vanishing species, as a growing population has long been a mark of healthy nations and rising civilization. Falling populations have been a sign of nations and civilizations in decline. If that holds true, Western civilization, power, and wealth aside, is in critical condition. First world nations are fading away. They face a mortal crisis, not because of something happening in the third world, but because of what is not happening at home and in the homes of the first world. Western fertility rates have been falling for decades. No European nation is producing enough babies to replace its population. As years slip by, the birth rate is not stabilizing. Their population numbers are leveling out. They are doing what all asserted economies eventually do. In a score of countries, the old are already dying off faster than the young being born. There is no sign of a turnaround. Now, the absolute numbers of Europeans have begun to fall. And as white supremacy is shifting to minority status, they're placing the necessary machinery to have the masses of people under their leash, to keep you destabilized, to keep you socially poor, to keep you politically poor, to keep you economically poor. This is not a matter of prophecy, but of mathematics. The steeper and longer the dive, the more difficult it is to pull out. The rich are different from us, but the rich also have fewer children. As America's poor enter the middle class and the middle class becomes affluent, and the affluent become rich, each adopts the style of the class they have lately entered. All begin to downsize their families. All begin to have fewer children. A corollary follows. The richer a nation becomes, the fewer its children, and the sooner it begins to shrink. You're a fool and an idiot if you think that white supremacy depends on population numbers. The legacy of white supremacy is very simple: to be able to pass on their power, wealth, and influence to the next generation. That is the entire purpose and goal of white supremacy. The goal for white supremacy is a permanent white economic majority. They want a permanent white social economic majority. While whites will become a numerical minority in the coming decades, they will maintain their dominant position socioeconomically and politically. The massive economic resources and political power that whites have amassed will not erode as their numbers wane. In fact, as people of color have increased their numbers, the white political machinery is already working to minimize the political power of non-whites. They created a system of structural racism where white people held societal power, even without explicit racial hatred being the sole drive. The concept of whiteness itself is considered a modern, colonial invention used as a tool to establish and maintain power, granting rights and privileges based on racial categorization. Racial categories were implemented and refined by colonizing powers to solidify their control over resources and people. White supremacy's portrayal of God as a white European reflects a cultural imposition of whiteness to reinforce power structures. A white Jesus visually supported caste systems, placing white Europeans at the top. From the 16th century to the 20th century, the Western nations colonized most of the world. Throughout those years, white supremacy was fighting, scrapping, terrorizing, stealing, killing, raping, burning, pillaging, and destroying its way to the top. At its inception, property rights in the United States were governed by what is known as the doctrine of discovery. Under the doctrine of discovery, when European Christian visitors arrived on new lands, they automatically gained sovereignty and property rights in the lands if the indigenous inhabitants of that land were non-European and non-Christian. This was the case even though the indigenous inhabitants of the land already owned, occupied, and used the lands in ways that they saw fit. Nevertheless, under the guise of the doctrine of discovery, the European Christian visitors to the land were deemed to establish property rights in the land on the grounds that they discovered it. The property right was defined as being essentially an exclusive fee title held by the discovering European country, but subject to the indigenous American Indian occupancy right. That was the first phase of white supremacy. The reels of history are now running in reverse. We are entering the next 5 centuries of white supremacy. Europe has embraced her destiny, perhaps not consciously as a people, but collective as a people. The real clash of civilizations will not be between the West and the post-West within the West itself. This clash has already taken place within the brain of Western civilization, the American intellectual class. It is now spreading from that brain to the body politic. Cultural degeneration and social decomposition travel together. The sexual revolution has begun to devour its children. The statistics on abortion, divorce, collapsing birth rates, single parent homes, teen suicides, school shootings, drug use, child abuse, spouse abuse, violent crime, incarceration rates, and falling test scores show how this society, in which the Cultural Revolution is ascendant, is decomposing and dying. The ideology of the revolution clashes with laws of human nature. This new society is built on sand. Women are not the same as men, and saying so does not make it so. Women are profoundly different, with separate and distinct social roles that are not interchangeable, judicial orders notwithstanding. They cannot live as men do without calamitous consequences for the family, society, and country. White women are positioned below white men, but still above non-white individuals, often receiving entitlements and social advantages through their proximity to whiteness. Historically and legally, whiteness has functioned as a property right, granting unearned material and psychological benefits such as access to property, better schools, and leniency from the legal system to white individuals. Psychological wage, where even poor white laborers received benefits in the form of social deference and status merely for being white, which aligned their interests with the elite ruling class rather than with exploited non-whites. Systemic racism is not simply a thing of the past. It is up close and personal in the present. Today, this structural racism is seen as continuing to shape social institutions, including the education system, law enforcement, and the economy. And as the numbers of the white population begin to decline, they are now going to get more violent, they are going to get more radical, they are going to get more evil, they are going to get more barbaric, and of course, they are going to get more desperate. Demographic changes are fueling a white extinction anxiety among some white individuals, which extremist groups exploit through conspiracy theories like the Great Replacement Theory. This anxiety drives recruitment. White supremacist groups have already infiltrated U.S. law enforcement agencies in every region of the country. U.S. law enforcement officials have been tied to racist militant activities in more than a dozen states, and hundreds of police officers have been caught posting racist and bigoted social media content. And yet, U.S. agencies lack a national strategy to identify white supremacist police and root out this problem. Police officers is one of the safest jobs in America. Construction workers have a more dangerous job than police officers. Just look up how many construction workers die a year. Plus, the government overlooks white cops and targets Black, Latino, Indigenous, and colored communities. The lost cause tradition, as both a version of history and as a racial ideology, is still certainly very much alive in neo-Confederate organizations, on numerous websites, among white supremacist groups and staunch advocates of the Confederate battle flag, and even among some mainstream American politicians. Military experience is found throughout the white supremacist extremist movement as the result of recruitment campaigns by extremist groups and self-recruitment by veterans sympathetic to white supremacist causes. Extremist leaders seek to recruit members with military experience in order to exploit their discipline, knowledge of firearms, and tactical skills. Annually, police in the U.S. cause around 1,000 deaths. These deaths predominantly involve firearms. Black and Latino individuals are disproportionately affected. Many police-involved deaths are misclassified in official records, underestimating the true numbers. So if you don't want to get gunned down in the streets, you're anti-police. What they really mean is that you're anti-white supremacy. The future of white supremacy involves its continued adaptation, moving from overt ideological forms to more embedded structural manifestations in response to changing demographics and societal norms. It will persist, but evolve in how it operates and conceals itself. White supremacy is expected to adapt to the browning of America rather than disappear. This could involve the expansion of the definition of whiteness to include some non white groups to maintain numerical dominance or operating as a cloaking device that gives the appearance of racial progress while maintaining underlying power structures. The tentacles of deeply buried and unconscious beliefs that white people and their way of life are being threatened are slowly creeping back into public view. White supremacy ideas have been rising on mainstream political discourse in recent years, moving from the fringe to a more public presence. Dreams of a white supremacy country are not new, but those desires have now been manifested in mainstream policy decisions and everyday acts of dehumanization. We are not witnessing a temporary backlash to increased equality. We are watching the consolidation of a white supremacist ideology that is no longer fringe or fleeting, but increasingly foundational and existentially dangerous for Black, Latino, Indigenous, and colored communities. White supremacy has served as the scaffolding on which this country was built through widespread atrocities against indigenous people, the transatlantic slave trade, Jim Crow segregation, and the prison industrial complex. Under international law, human rights are universal, inalienable, indivisible, and interdependent. Yet for millions of people in the United States, these rights are contingent on the color of their skin, their country of origin, their name, or their accent. Currently, safety, dignity, and belonging are no longer a shared promise, it's a tiered system. And those deemed to be outside the acceptable boundaries of whiteness are left vulnerable to violence, state neglect, and societal hostility. And as the white population numbers are dropping, white supremacy has launched a concerted effort to rewrite and sanitize the United States historical narrative, effectively seeking to erase the lived experiences of slavery, racism, indigenous dispossession, and other uncomfortable truths. White supremacy wants to control the past by rewriting or erasing it, reshaping public memory to serve a dominant narrative. By delegitimizing historical facts and controlling how history is represented, power becomes centralized, dissenting narratives are suppressed, and the foundations of a pluralistic society are weakened. You see, erasing white supremacy is teaching white supremacy. When it comes to African Americans, Mexican Americans, indigenous people, they want to erase our history. School systems went on a campaign to get rid of the books. They want to tell your children this thing's never happened. There is a significant movement in state legislatures across the U.S. to pass laws that restrict how history, particularly regarding race and systemic racism, can be taught in schools. This has led to the banning of hundreds of books. That's why it's important for us to put our history in proper context. People, it's time to get your house in order. Time to face the white beast eye to eye. White supremacy is the wicked individual, corrupt institutional, and evil societal belief in the superiority of white Western European cultural heritage, physical features, fair skin color, traditions, customs, holidays, religion, beliefs, values over all other groups and their heritage. Throughout history, our nation has enforced these standards through social, economic, and political powers. The invisible undercurrent of white supremacy renders racism invisible, equates normality with whiteness, and mimics the norms of fairness, justice, and equality. When we speak up and criticize America for the racism that is deeply embedded in our social institutions, a lot of white supremacist sympathizers feel they are being personally attacked. This is because deep down they realize that they benefit from unearned assets associated with whiteness. We're not endorsing Democrats or Republicans. We're not bootlickers. Left wing, right wing, both wings of the same bird of white supremacy. Remember, white supremacy takes both sides of the conversation. We will never bargain with the devil. We are the descendants of indigenous American Indians. We have a culture of resistance. We are the descendants of Olmecs, Mayans, Mexica, Incas, Zapotec, Mixtec, Purepecha, Otomi, Totonac, Raramuri, Yaquis, and many, many other tribes. We will deconstruct white supremacy and its laws. We will fight for justice. We will fight righteously. We will fight with honor. We will fight strategically. We will inspire people. You cannot inspire with injustice. You can only inspire with justice. We will fight with the righteous for justice, and that is our culture. Everyone hates us but loves our culture. Indigenous America is waking up and it's causing chaos amongst the leechers in our land. We know where we're going. We always know. The destination always been cleared. Liberation, dignity, safety, freedom, joy. We always had a vision. We always had a direction. We always had a purpose. We always had a legacy. And it's up to us to put our history in proper context. We are going to say our story. We own our stories. We are going to say what happened to our people. We are going to continue to fight. We will bring the world to its knees. And this concludes for tonight's broadcast. Until next time, family, and always remember we are the future.